281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. Your phone calls, and a guest that's going to be talking about something you've probably not heard about as a result of political correctness in our military. Coming up next, it's The Morning Show with me, Chris Salcedo, on the Voice of Texas, AM 700 KSEV. I wanted to tip the folks off here in the KSEV audience about something that, well, really I didn't even know about. So when I read about this and about the growing regularity this is happening, I thought you ought to know about it too. I want to bring on Brian Bouffard. He earned his law degree at Duke University Law School as a former Navy JAG officer and practices law up there in Fort Worth, Texas. He is a criminal and military defense counsel who travels worldwide representing service members facing court-martial. Now, Brian frequently defends clients accused of sexual assault and has seen the effect of the current political climate on the fairness of the military justice system. Mr. Bouffard, welcome to the Voice of Texas, AM 700 KSEV.
Hey, good morning, Chris. Thanks for having me.
As we integrate, let me walk the folks through what we have seen, over these decades developing in the United States Armed Forces. We have seen a push to integrate women into what have been heretofore roles that they have not been part of. Some combat roles, some roles that are close to the front lines, and we're getting more integration, mixing of the two sexes in our military, and that has led to a rash of allegations of sexual harassment, which I think the brass have rightly taken seriously, because nobody wants sexual harassment or sexual assaults to be part of any culture, for God's sakes. Now that time has progressed on, now we're starting to find out. So we had the mixing, then we had the allegations of sexual impropriety, whether it be harassment or assault. And now we've reached stage 3, where folks have actually had to look and do some analysis here, and we're finding that perhaps a lot of these cases were false.
That's true, and I think you said it exactly the way it needs to be said. One sexual assault or incident of sexual harassment is one too many. I agree with that, and I think most thinking people do agree with that. What we're not hearing, though, and what we need to be hearing is kind of a counterpoint to that, and that is one false allegation or one wrongfully accused person is also one too many.
And what are the stats looking like that you have compiled about the number of accusations of sexual impropriety, again, either harassment or assault, as compared to those who have turned out to be making false accusations against their comrades in arms?
I'm not personally doing the statistics or compiling them. Most of what I know is anecdotal, not only my own experience, but talking with a lot of my cohorts and their experience. What we're seeing is a climate that really incentivizes or can incentivize false reporting. It's very easy to make a claim of sexual assault or sexual harassment, and unfortunately everybody is geared, rather than to do an independent investigation and get to the truth. The leadership is more in a mode of kind of believing every allegation that comes across their desk, and that's leading to cases being sent to trial that shouldn't be sent to trial.
Give me some examples of cases that perhaps you've personally worked where the individual was falsely accused and had their lives ruined.
Every time somebody is even accused of a crime like this, whether it's in the military or in the civilian world, there are costs to that, and there's damage to that really never goes away. And the problem is that you would think and you would hope that whenever any kind of allegation of any crime is raised, that law enforcement is going to do a measured and competent and open-minded investigation of that claim to determine whether there's any truth to it or not. What we're seeing these days, particularly in the senior leadership, is we're seeing, rather than a viewpoint of whether a case has prosecutorial merit, for example, we're seeing the influence of politics really sort of take over the process. So decisions are being made to protect the careers of the senior leaders who are making these decisions, in my opinion, rather than what's best for this alleged victim and this alleged offender.
Some statistics are suggesting that only 2% of military rape allegations are false. However, a review of 556 rape accusations filed against Air Force personnel found that 27% of women later recanted their accusation. Then 25 criteria were developed based on a profile of those women and then submitted to 3 independent reviewers to review the remaining cases. If all 3 reviewers deemed the allegation was false, it was categorized as a false accusation. So here it goes. As a result, 60% of all allegations were found to be false. Who is compiling that? That is mediaradar.org compiling that. 60%. That's astonishing to me.
Well, it is astonishing, and frankly, in the last couple of years, particularly in the senior leadership in the Marine Corps, the Marine officer and staff NCO Corps who comprise the pool of people from which jurors are selected, they have been force-fed bogus statistics. And the first statistic you mentioned is the one that I'm thinking of, telling people, well, only 2% of these are false. That sends a powerful message to somebody sitting on a jury who has other concerns other than what's right for this particular accused or this particular case. And the biggest concern is, what are the senior folks going to think of what I do in this case? Am I still going to be promoted? Am I going to upset somebody who could have a positive or negative effect on me later on? And nobody wants to talk about that, but that's what's going on.
Well, there are ramifications. By the way, Brian Bouffard, my guest right now, he represents service members facing court-martial. The ramifications I spoke of are careers ruined. We know what happens when somebody's accused of something like this in the private sector or out here in non-military land. I mean, it can be devastating to somebody's life and career. And typically the accusation gets a lot of circulation, but when it's found to be false, you can't get your reputation back. I imagine the same scenario plays out inside the military.
It absolutely does. You got to remember, by and large, we're talking about young Americans. We're talking about the same demographic of Americans that might be in college or in the junior in the workforce. So we're talking about a demographic in which certain crimes occur at a certain rate. And I have seen no evidence to suggest that there's anything about the military that encourages or makes more likely somebody's going to be sexually assaulted. But when you talk about lives ruined, every case of sexual assault that involves a conviction, that person's going to be a sex offender and probably for the rest of their lives. Can't get any more serious.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Former Navy JAG officer Brian Bouffard, he defends folks facing court-martial on various accusations, and he's specializing lately in sexual assault cases. Sir, thanks for your time here on The Voice of Texas. Have a blessed Easter weekend, sir.
You too, and thanks for having me.
You betcha. Some of the dangers, I mean, even into our military, we're seeing the politically correct crowd and left-wingers getting into portions of our society where they have not been allowed to in the past. It's downright dangerous.